Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Bricks King podcast, where I'm going to bend your ear about Lego, review those amazing bricks of plastic, and discuss what is new and up and coming around the Lego world. I'm your Minifigure host, Matt. Let's build on it. Welcome in, everybody. How are we doing today? Hopefully you're doing quite lovely. Finally glad to be back here. Took a few days away, and then I came back, and technology broke. I had to have a part 2 components on my mixer repaired. Well, I repaired them, but I had to order them. First off, I had to find out what the issue was. So thank you, U.S. military, for the electronics training that I had many years ago, 20 plus years ago, to be able to help me troubleshoot this thing and get the pods replaced that I needed replaced. So finally, technology is back up and running. And man, I'll tell you what, everybody always says, oh, we're so dependent on technology and stuff. You really don't realize, I don't have a backup mixer. I have a little travel thing that I can put into my phone to do some recordings and stuff like that. But I don't have another mixer board. And it's one of those things I don't need the expense. No one needs 2 of the same thing of something that really usually doesn't break. It's just, wear and tear on a component over and over and over. You're turning this knob every single time that you record, and inevitably something is going to happen at some point in time. So thus the reason we were a little behind, but we're back. I'm glad to be back. We're talking Batman of all things, believe it or not. I'm not the biggest connoisseur of superhero stuff, Marvel, DC, doesn't really matter. If anything, Batman would be the place that I would go more so than anything else, just due to the sheer fact that I like Batman more so than just about any other than maybe X-Men. I could do the X-Men, but I believe that falls under DC, I think, right? I don't know. At this point, my brain is totally locked up with DC Batman. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So I have 3 sets here that we're going to bust into, discuss, and I got to tell you, all 3 are actually pretty good. One of them is much larger than I had any idea would be. I was really shocked at the scale of it. And having it on my recording studio table right here, I'm kind of like, what? I built it and I just couldn't get over the sheer size of it. So we'll talk about that here in a few minutes. But first one up that we need to talk about is the Batman Mech Armor. 76270 is the set number. It has 140 pieces, and it's going to retail for $15, 15 euros, coming in August. So August 1st, you'll be able to get your hands on this. Thank you to the Lego Group for giving me an opportunity to review these a little early, all 3 of them. So this is a mini mech, and obviously it should explain that it's mini with 140 pieces and the price tag. But again, mini mechs, there's so much solid value in the mini mechs. Every single time that Lego launches one of these, even if it's not a theme that I'm particularly interested in, they just always do well. They always sell well, they always build well, they always display well, and they always play well. I did not mean to do the got type thing with play well. Jeez. Anywho, so this thing has pretty built up mechanics to it. The body of it is pretty bulky for such a tiny mech. You do have some, so let's just start here at the base of this thing. So your feet, the Batman mech feet, are actually pretty large. They do a good solid job of holding everything down. But they just use a little ball down here for what would be like the ankle. So it can rock side to side, very, very minimal forward and back, but you don't really need a whole lot. And then it can rotate 360 degrees. And the nice thing about it is the knees are locked on this, because it's one of those pieces that we have seen with all of these mechs over and over and over, where they don't want things to move. They lock them up. And that is exactly what happens here to date with this mech. So as you get to the hip joint, same thing. We've got a little ball and socket joint here. You can rotate the entire leg at the hip joint here the entire way around, full 360 degrees. It splays out a full 90 degrees, which is kind of bizarre. And then it only is allowed to go so far inside because it is it is brick locked. It is brick locked into place. I broke the feet off. That's me snapping them back in. So you have swivel here for the hips as well, right there at the torso. The thing about that is it only goes so far because you have a little blaster pack that is on the back end of this. So it only allows you to go as far as that without hitting it. So then it doesn't really, you don't want to really get any weird contortion or anything like that in this. That's really not the intent behind it. And I don't think anybody would really want that, but but there's also a brick built belt of the Batman variety here, that gold, the pearl gold that they use here. So you do have that ability as well. I keep popping these feet off. This is the second time that I've done this, posing this puppy, and I've not had this issue before. Anyway, so as we move up, your chest is emblazoned with the Batman logo on a 2x2 round tile. That is a print, obviously, of course. So you can pop your Batman in or out. He just sits in there. You just load up the front little chest piece, pull it up, and your Batman is in place inside of his mech, or he's out. Moving up to the shoulder joints will kind of like where the biceps almost would be, are actually really kind of cool looking in the way that they are built as far as size and depth and color and just overall size. I just can't get over. For a mini mech, it just feels like it's not a bad big. It just feels like they chose to go with more bulk to make it look more intimidating, and I really appreciate that. If it was accidental, hey, whatever, I'm good with it. But another ball joint here allows you to swivel the entire arm 360 degrees. It can splay it out quite far. It can actually go above 90 degrees, so that's nice to have as well, to be able to get it into different poses. Now, the right hand of your Bat Mech here, both hands, by the way, have 3 fingers and a thumb. But this Bat Mech, what it has on the right hand, no opportunity to be able to put a weapon in his hand, just so you know. There's nothing to clip it into place. There's nothing to pin it into place. There's nothing that you can have. But he does have this little tile shooter, and so you do have that. And the cool thing is, you get multiple studs, right? You get the 1x1 studs that you can shoot, boo, pew, and they're red. They're trans red. Now, the interesting thing is, usually when that happens, you're like, okay, when you build something like this, you might put one in there, and then you're like, where do I put the extras? Well, there is actually one spot that I made up. It doesn't look the most pretty, I guess, but on the left hand, there is a stud that is open. Or just behind the hand, I guess, where the wrist/elbow, and the size of this thing, I guess it'd be more so the elbow. But I was able to stack those up right there. It actually doesn't look too bad. It looks almost fitting like it should be there, but whatever. But just next to that little blaster cannon, they actually have the Batarang that he holds in his hand. Usually they have a clip there. Again, Lego has listened for how many years? Myself, other people complaining, there's nowhere to put a weapon. There's nowhere to put my binoculars on city sets. There's nowhere to put my my radio, my anything. They listen, and when there's an opportunity, they usually do a pretty good job these days of giving you that option to be able to put something there. So that is nice as well. If we move over to the left arm is identical other than the hand. So on the hand, 3 fingers and a thumb. But what you have here is you have his little Batarang type little blaster thing. It looks like a kind of like a grapple. You can shoot that out. It's a big one. It's a really, really big one. You can pretend that goes out and does whatever it does. It just clips in. It studs into one stud here, and you can actually sweep back the little the wings of it, if you will, just ever so slightly, and then pull the fingers back down and cover the front of it like it's actually holding it. So I do appreciate that. That is kind of neat. And then this thing also, like I told you, it does have a blaster in the back, so it can fly, because Batman's got to fly. He's got to get around. So you have these big kind of weird looking wings that are back here behind the arms, and they can be folded up. They can be folded down. It is however you would like to do it. So you can put him up if you want him to fly. If not, you can put it down almost like a cape. And if you think of it as in like full battle rattle mode or something like that, instead of it being a cape, it almost becomes like a shield. So that's kind of neat to protect the sides of the mech and stuff like that in the rear. But you also have this little blaster that is in the back, like I had mentioned. There's no flames or anything to it. You can rotate it. Doesn't do anything. It's just because it's pinned into place and it's rotating on the pin. Now, Batman himself. Batman's got his little Batman dual-molded helmet that he can wear. And Bruce Wayne's got two different faces. He's got one face where he's angry and one face where he's just mouth closed and one of his eyebrows raised. It's usually the way I look most of the time. I always have one eyebrow furrowed because I'm weird. Anyway, he has a black cape, but the printing on this actually looks pretty decent. You've got his printed abs that he's got going on, and then you've got a nice little belt that is yellow that is printed on here. I'm sure somebody's going to say, oh, it should be gold and not yellow, but I think it looks just fine. But the cool thing is you can sit him in there with his cape and you got your Batman ready to go in his mech. Now you can pose this thing, like I said, a little bit. You do have to be careful with the ankle joints down there because, as you heard, they did pop off a few times just talking about this. So that I don't think it's really a cause for concern as much as it is just, I'm just messing with it a little bit too much, trying to do a little too many things or whatnot. But the nice thing is it's not like it's a real bad piece to be able to move around or whatever, but you can kind of get him in a semi-running pose. So I do like it. I think it's a pretty neat little mech for $15. You really can't go wrong. I don't have any complaints about it other than, I popped off the feet a few times, but there's really nothing that, that aside, I'm not really like, oh, that's such a big problem. So whatever. So overall, I think it's a pretty good deal. But again, it's a mini mech. Mini mechs seem to do well. I love building them, and they're just a lot of fun to, collect, like people like collect brickheads. It's a lot of fun to be able to collect mini mechs of all kinds of different themes, genres, whatever, and, have them built and then display them. It's what people do with action figures, right? It's the same kind of thing. Or Lego collectors. Instead of having all these brickheads, I have these. Or instead of having modulars, I have these. It's just, it's a cool little thing to be able to set up and display in its own right. So the next one we're going to talk about is the Batman construction figure and Bat Pod bike. 76273 is the set number. It has 713 pieces, and it's going to retail for $65 here in the United States and 75 euros across the pond. That's a little bit of a wicked one as far as price. Finally, something in our favor. Seems time and time again, we end up having to pay way extra. So the interesting thing is this. You have this big brick-built figure. You have this big brick-built bike. When I looked at the box, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I know what I'm building. I have an idea and stuff like that. I honestly did not have any idea how big this thing was going to be. Bike, Batman. Like after I finished this, I ran out of here and I ran into our media room where my wife was. Like a 6-year-old kid that had an action figure in his hand is kind of like, Mom, look. Like I was like, wifey, look at this. How cool is this? Look at this guy. And he can do this. Do you want to see it? Look. And he can do this and he can do that. Watch, I can put it on the bike. She just looked at me like I was, hideously stupid. No, I'm kidding. But it was just kind of funny because I was like, there's so many cool things that you can do with something this big. And right now I've got my hand, even though I have smaller hands, got it wrapped around the torso and I can whip this thing all around. I mean, this reminds me of like an old G.I. Joe, like a 12-inch figure. And there's just something about it. I don't know what it is, but there's just something about it in the way that it's built. It's just really, really fun. So let's talk about him first, the Batman figure here. It was a nice little build. I will mention the cape on this thing is huge, by the way, but there's not a whole lot of ugly spaces on here. There are a few, like your hip joints. There's clickable joints here, and it's not the prettiest looking, but it's not bad. On the backside, most of it is covered by the cape, so that looks even better. But overall, it's a clean look, especially because of all the black. Now, it is not entirely black, of course. And, there's going to be some people that are going to say, well, the ball joint pieces that aren't black, that sticks out like a sore thumb. It actually really doesn't look too bad based on where they're at, because there's only 2 spots where you really run into that. So the head You have a printed face, obviously. That is nice. The head can swivel 360 degrees. It can also go back almost full 90 degrees and then look down quite a bit before it becomes brick locked with his chest. But obviously his ears are built up as well on his helmet and stuff. But it's nice. You can really get him looking in a bunch of different ways. You can even kind of cock his head to the side just ever so slightly, again, to get a different look. The cape is pinned on with it's held on by actually two studs, that 1x1 round studs with holes in the middle that attach to a bar. So that's how your cape is attached. His shoulder pauldrons, those big kind of egg type looking pieces, scoop type pieces, those are clipped into place to be able to cover up the ugliness of the joint of the shoulder, which is a larger ball joint. So you can get that thing to go up quite a bit, get him into some really, really good poses. And the one thing that I will say about this figure is this is a fully posable figure. The entire thing is posable, from the shoulders to the elbows, to the wrists, to the fingers, to the wall. Batman is posable to all. So you get to the elbow, and you actually have two joints. They're the 1x2 brick 1x2 plate that has the little swivel right on each side, or what would be in the middle. So you have that, but there are two of them here, so it gives you some solid feeling. It gives you some security there, and a much stronger ability to pose it without concerning that something might pop off. Getting down to the wrist, we have another ball joint here, just a small one this time, but you can actually get his wrist in a full 90-degree rake towards the body, which is cool. It's kind of neat. You have 3 fingers and a thumb, and then you also have a clip in here so that you can, carry weaponry and whatnot, which is also important for a Batman figure. The other arm is identical, same thing, clip on the other side as well. The chest. His chest is built up quite well. Got some slope pieces here. And they actually are not completely locked into place. They pretty much are, but they are on ability to just shift ever so slightly. But it is a print. The Batman logo is a print, so that is nice. Then you get into his abs. Batman's super rock hard abs. Then you get into the brick belt here. And then we move down to the joints of the hips. We have swivel joints that are clickable. They can click out, so you can lock things into place. And then you can rotate forward and backward. So I love that ability of all the flexible posing that you can get him into, because again, you can get him into some really sharp looking poses to be able to do some photography if you would like. Some people like to do that. Some people don't. One thing that I did miss though, just above his belt, in between two of his pairs of abs, you can swivel this thing. He can actually spin 360 degrees around at that joint. So that is nice to be able to have. But after you move down, we've got the big old thigh here, big old chunky thigh. It feels a little bit shorter than it should, but it's okay. I don't really have so much of an issue with it. It looks like he's wearing big old tall boots. Is what we have going on down here at the knee joint. The knee joint is a ball joint as well, but it really only allows you to have ever so slight swivel left and right. Both knee joints, by the way, because each are identical, but you can get it forward quite a bit. And then you can get him a full kickback, a full 90-degree kickback. So you can get him into almost like a downward pose if you so choose. So that is nice. Get him to stomp out some enemies or whatnot. So that's kind of cool. But as you get down below here and you get down to the calf and that area and all, what you end up running into is this. You don't really have much going on. Like it looks like a boot, looks like a calf, I guess, to a certain degree, but not much. I guess there's really nothing to really be like, oh my God, that is so cool. So I don't know. But you get down to the ankle. The ankle is a little interesting. I have some slight disappointment here for posing reasons only. Durability, strength, structural reasons, I understand why it is this way, but I just wish it would have been ever so slightly different just for posability reasons. He does have big old feet, of course. Why would he not? But you can get his feet, that ankle joint, you can get it 90 degrees to the left and right. Forward and backward, the rocking of it is not a whole lot. obviously they want this thing to be able to stand on its own without having to do all these weird kind of things. So I do understand that. It just does stink for posability reasons. Like I said, because you only have so much rocker forward and back. It's okay. I can live with it, but it's a cool little, it's a cool little figure. Little, I shouldn't say it is little. It's not little, but it is pretty wicked. So let's talk about the Bat Bike, because the Bat Bike is super important for the Batman, because the Batman needs the Bat Bike to do all the Bat things at this point in time. Before we move any further into this Batman loveliness, we've got to take a quick ad break. We'll be back in a moment. What do we have here? Well, we've got a bunch. We've got a bunch of things. The scale of this thing is suitable just along with the Batman himself. Large, very, 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 very large bike here. I could not believe the sheer size of this when I built it. I just could not get over the fact of how large this thing was actually going to be once it was all said and done. It's just, it's a really long bike. So you have some squishy tires here, the big old tires in the front and back, one on each. And then obviously they rotate around fully. So you do have that playability. Up in the front of the bike, we have his weaponry that consists of some little blasters that don't shoot anything out of, a bunch of different blasters. You get some nice suspension work for what is supposed to look like the front suspension of the bike. And then you also have some blasters here that actually shoot out your tiles, your stud shooters that you have. So you have one on each side of the wheel. And then you have the section just above that with some stickering, but you have the, I don't know what you want to call it. The protective front. What should we call this? The windscreen, the windscreen that is not really a windscreen, but is just some kind of weird protection mechanism. You do have that can be opened, that can be closed, bring each side together. Doesn't really matter. And then you have the fuselage of the bike right here where the fuel tank would be, where, your Batman he's laying down and he's going, right? You have your seat. Your seat is clickable. It can be moved up and down however you would like to be able to position your Bat guy. Completely up to you. Then as we move back, we get an idea of an engine with the casings on each side. And we get to the thin part of the bike towards the rear. We have a rear, what should we call this? Water, dirt type mud flap idea, something like that, that are on motorcycles to a certain degree. Obviously not behind the tire, but right in front of the tire. So you're not covered with all the nasty goo and stuff coming off the road and whatnot. And then to the very, very back of this, just behind there, we have some paddles that kind of move forward and back. And that is where Batman's feet go. There's a stud on each one of these, and there's a stud opening on the bottom of Batman's feet, so you can actually stud his feet into position without him just hanging there. And then you have your big old tire in the rear. So let's go ahead and throw Batman on his bike and talk about whether it works well, it doesn't work well. So let's get him posed up.
6 hours later.
Okay. So now that we have Batman back on his bike, or actually on his bike for the first time today, it does take a moment. It is not something that happens super fast. If you are really trying to get this thing to actually display, it's going to take a few minutes to be able to get him exactly the way you want him, as if you couldn't tell. However, once he's on there, it does look pretty wicked. The head, remember I told you the head goes back a full 90 degrees. The reason for that is because of this laying down position, this forward lay position. He's got to have his head up. Can you imagine riding a motorcycle like that? I've ridden high performance motorcycles for a long time, and being in the tuck position on a super bike, looking through the windscreen, you have the little cutout there for your chin, your helmet chin part, but man, it wears on your neck. Can you imagine like Batman having to lay like this? But then again, we only ever see him on the bike for 10 seconds at a time. It must not be that bad. It must be somewhat comfortable. Anywho. So it's a pretty neat little build. I am more partial to Batman than the motorcycle. The Bat bike is okay. The Bat pod, whatever. Definitely not my favorite of Batman builds. I definitely think that there is something missing. Maybe I don't know. Maybe the bike could have done better with another, I don't know, 50 pieces or something. It feels too skeleton-ish. I don't know. It's just my opinion. And, some people are going to be that are Batman enthusiasts are going to say, well, you are totally wrong, Matt. I will stand by my opinion, but that is okay. We each have our own opinion. So if I'm wrong, you think I'm wrong, I am okay with that. I will live to fight another day with you about Batman being wrong. No, I'm kidding. Anyway, moving on. Let's talk about the last one here. And man, this has been a long episode. I just keep rattling on. I guess that's what happens when you don't have an opportunity to do recording because things break. Anyway, the final set that we're going to talk about today is Batman with the Batmobile versus Harley Quinn and Mr. Freeze. 76274 is the set number. 435 pieces is what you're getting in the box. And it's going to cost you $60 to get what's in the box, or 60 euros as well. Let's talk about it. This beauty comes to us from the animated series of Batman. I used to watch that when I was a kid. An older kid, I guess, at that point in time, because it wasn't on as often, or I shouldn't even say that. It was on. It just was, whatever. I was a little older at that point, so I wasn't really into that as much as probably some other things like, girls. I don't even know it was then. But anyway, the main focal point of this is the car itself, the Batmobile. This thing is a very thickly built, heavily built machine, and it actually looks a lot like the original. So I'm very, very happy to be able to get this thing looking the way it does in comparison to the cartoon itself. I think it's a really cool idea. I like that a lot. So the car, what has she got? Well, she's got some blasters on it. She's got some tile shooters here. So you definitely have an opportunity to be able to go pew pew right there with those pretty things. But let's start up here in the front. If you didn't realize, this is also very narrow in comparison to other vehicles and stuff like that. Batmobiles, it is pretty narrow, just like in the cartoon. It's very sleek looking though. It's a lot of fun. So in the front, we have our bumper here. We have a sticker here for the lights in the front. We have some nice tiling going on here right in the center, right next to the front of each wheel well. One thing I will say is it is boxy, but the way that they were able to get this tiling to kind of really, really get the characteristic of the front nose of this thing, I think is really sharp, the front grille. So that is nicely done right there. Your shooters that you have here, your tile shooters, like I had mentioned, there are two things that you can take into account here. Now, these on the actual car would pop out and, bang, bang, shoot, shoot, pew, pew, whatever is coming out of them in the cartoon. You can actually remove these if you want to. You don't want to have them on there for whatever reason. And then you can actually kind of see like a grilling effect that is just right underneath that where these sit. You have one on each side. They are just pinned into place, so you can remove it, set it aside. You don't want to have it for display purposes, or maybe you do. Doesn't really matter. But they just in and out real quick. Not a big deal. The front end of this car is super duper 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 long. The car is long in general, but the front end is exceptionally long, just like most Batmobiles in any movie or series that has pretty much ever been done, aside from maybe The Dark Knight. Those three films where he had his tumbler, because that wasn't a Batmobile, it was a tumbler. So we move back to the cockpit area of this. The windscreen folds up so you can see down in there where Batman is. Put him in there, take him out. He's got his yoke to be able to drive this thing. He's got some controls that are on each side of him. On the left side, on the right side, he's got some stickering that has some buttons and different controls and stuff like that. And then he also has his display in there so he can see what's going on at any given time with his car, or maybe in front. Looks like kind of like a cityscape on the one, maybe radar or some sort. So you get him in there. There's plenty of room in there. The only thing that I don't like about it down here on the inside is just behind where he sits. It's an empty space, and you can actually see down out the bottom of the Batmobile. You can see the gearing back here that goes to the rear wheel, which we'll talk about in a moment. So that's kind of a bummer, but I'm sure there's a way that could be fixed, modified, just with a plate or two, just to close that thing up ever so slightly if that were something that bugs you. On each side of the cockpit window, along the side of the car, we have where, kind of some more intake ideas that are going on here with what looks to be what should be like an intake vent. Nice little angle here, a little angled plate that they have here. It's a nice way to have it. You could have it stick straight out if you want it that way, or you can tuck it in. It doesn't really matter. It looks fine either way. And we get to the rear wheels here. They are geared because when this thing rolls across the floor, it spins the flame sticking out the back of the engine, the jet blasting engine. So that is kind of cool. But just before we get back there, the build as far as the texturing on the rear deck lid is sharp. It looks like Batman's kind of cape that is flowing along the back end of the very back end of the car. I mean, they just did a really good job of capturing that fast looking appeal without it being too blocky, even though it is really blocky. They just really captured a really good way of doing it. So you build that section in a completely different way than you do most of the other car, studs on the side type deal. So it's a nice building technique back through there. And then, like I had mentioned, you have your flame sticking out the back, and then you have two taillights on the rear end. One thing that I did, because you get a bunch of extra shooter tiles here to be able to put out your pew pew shooters, I actually put them just behind the cockpit here. There's 8 studs, and I actually just covered them up there. So I've got some red that is going on right there. So you don't have to. I just don't like losing them. And, I'm just difficult. I'm just difficult. How about that? So it's a cool little car. It does come with a stand, a little turntable stand. I am not the biggest fan of the way it looks on the turntable. Honestly, that's just my opinion. It looks okay. It looks fine. It looks dandy, but I don't know. It's okay. I'd honestly just rather it be by itself. But it does have this little sticker plaque that comes with it. It says Batman the Animated Series, Batmobile, length, all that kind of stuff. Turbo diesel V8 and jet turbine. Who doesn't love that? But I never knew it took diesel fuel. It's kind of cool. So then we move on to our minifigs. We've got 3 of them here. Batman has a rubbery plastic cape here that is kind of scooped down in the back. You can actually sit him in the car with his cape, so you don't have to worry about that. It comes down to the level of where his butt is, where he is sitting in the car. And I got to tell you something. Now that school is out, and not just because school is out, but now that school's out and I'm talking about Batman's butt with his cape, it never ceases to amaze me how many kids laugh and laugh hysterically when you say the word butt. I just don't get it. But it is so funny to listen to them giggle. It is hilarious. It'll definitely bring you out of a mood. Anyway, so he's got dual molded legs here for his black boots, and then he's got his gray for his pants, his suit. The printing for his belt is okay. It's kind of like a neonish yellow. It's weird. It's got some orange detailing to it, but it doesn't seem dark enough, right? You're printing on a dark color, trying to get the most brightness out of this, and it just doesn't work quite well. So again, dual molded helmet for Batman, and then he's got his angry face and his furrowed eyebrow on the other one. So then we move on to Mr. Freeze. Mr. Freeze comes with a hand blaster that can shoot out a tile. He's got extra tiles, by the way, which I have attached to the car because I'm weird. He comes with his little glass helmet and his scary looking face. One of these days, Lego's going to find a way to be able to print the whole way around the minifig head. They're going to find a way to do it because this looks horrible from the side, because you have his goggles that he's wearing, and of course it's strapped the whole way around his head, except on the sides, digs into his skull, I guess, at that point in time. But the eyes look really sharp with the goggles. The printing on him is very simple and clean, not a problem at all. The only thing is the minifig head all minifig heads that need printed on the side need much better attention. Harley Quinn. What do we have with Harley Quinn here? Well, she's got her giant mallet that she is carrying around. She's wearing her traditional costume, at least from the series, where she looks like a jester or jestro. For those of you that call back to Nexo Knights, those of you that are a Nexo Knight fan, we are now friends. Anywho, so she has some printing, like I said. She's got some spades that are on here, black and red coloring, which is nice. The white is not as white as it should be just because you're printing on red. Unfortunately, that is a thing. We always know that is a thing that always happens. But her little jester's hat is kind of cute with the white balls on the end. And she comes with two faces. She comes with a happy face and just one face where her lips are kind of pursed together, smiling. The other one is kind of a creepy smiley face, like I'm doing something bad. But it's a nice solid offer here for $60. I think it's okay. I'd be happier at 50, honestly. A lot of pieces obviously go into the car. The car is a super thick car. It's a very, 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 very robust car. So you know what you're getting. My only thing is this. I cannot imagine how many pieces would this thing break into if it were to drop on the floor. And I have concrete floors in my home. Throughout the entire home, that was one of the design choices, aesthetics that we chose to do because dogs, easier to clean, just looks prettier. And I hate carpet and I hate tile and I just because you don't have to replace concrete ever. It's not going anywhere. So what? I have to seal it every 10 years, maybe. Fine. Put some wax on it, something. Anywho, but I cannot imagine this thing falling off of a stand or a table or my desk right now and hitting the floor and just hearing it just go into a bunch of pieces because I know for darn well this thing probably would shatter pretty heavily, without a doubt. So, pretty solid offer, like I said. I think everything works well. I think these are three nice sets that are actually going to come into DC land pretty favorably. I think from those of you out there that are big DC fans, especially the animated series, I know there's a big cult following for that, just like there is any cartoon series. I could definitely see a lot of people jumping on board with that one. It reminds me of the old Batman live action show that they did back in the 60s when we got that Batmobile. I think this is going to sell kind of like that, just in a different way, in its own way. So, anywho, that is going to wrap up the episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We do have more. We have some city stuff coming. We have some Ninjago stuff coming. And we've got a few other things coming. The city stuff, man, it has been a beast. This summer wave of Lego City it's expensive, but my God, is it fun to build. Every single one that I've gotten through at this point in time, I've just been blown away. And I think you guys are going to really, really like the new wave. Anywho, wrap it up. Time to go. Until we meet again, I'm your minifig host, Matt. Let's build on it.